So the first question that I have here is from Brother Muhyiddin, and he asked a question about praying behind a Hanafi Imam, and the question says, can we pray behind the Hanafi Imam because they do not raise their hands, which is Rafa al-yadain? All other masjids are very far. I have to admit that I certainly respect the person who asked the question because he is a seeker of the truth, and he wants to know. He probably does not know, and he does want to know. So the proper way of learning is by asking questions. So we should never be offended by questions, and we should never belittle any questions. But the fact that we're asking these questions, that this knowledge has not become widespread enough, that we do need to ask these questions, is also concerning for our ummah, for the unity of our ummah. Rafa al-yadain is not an obligation. Rafa al-yadain is not an obligation in your basically moves from one rukn to the other rukn. When you say Allahu Akbar and you do Rafa al-yadain, moving from qiyam to ruku', from ruku' to sujood, from sujood to qiyam, and so on. Sometimes from sujood to qiyam also Rafa al-yadain is prescribed. That is not an obligation, that is preferred. And I belong to that school that believes in Rafa al-yadain. Certainly there are authentic hadith in al-Bukhari and Muslim from a number of the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, about Rafa al-yadain, particularly in going down to ruku' and coming up from ruku'. However, the idea that we may not pray behind a Hanafi Imam is certainly completely invalid, completely far-fetched, and also conducive to disunity, because all of the madhahib will have differences between them concerning the details of the salah, and sometimes the differences could be even greater than the issue of Rafa al-yadain, because the issue of Rafa al-yadain, like I said, according to the other madhahib, Rafa al-yadain between the different corners or pillars of cornerstones or pillars of the prayers is not obligatory. But there could be other issues, such as al-masah al-jawrabain, which is wiping on the socks, for instance. Masah al-jawrabain would be a bigger issue. Why is it a bigger issue? Because if I do masah al-jawrabain and you believe, and there are so many differences between the madhahib, even in the Hanafi madhab, you may think that what is only acceptable is wiping on leather socks, but there are some types of socks that are also acceptable according to many Hanafis to wipe on. So the detailed differences between the madhahib in this regard, and the leather bottomed socks and the non-leather bottomed socks, and the thick socks and the thin socks, and this socks and that socks, so there are a lot of differences. So if I make mask or wipe on socks that you don't believe that that you may wipe on them, then it's a bigger deal. Why? Because at-tahara min al-hadath, which is ritual purity, is a prerequisite of the acceptance of the prayer, right or wrong? Yeah, absolutely, it is. It's a prerequisite by consensus, which is ritual purity. Now, then if I do masah and you don't believe that in that form of masah or wiping, you don't believe that the socks I am wearing you could do masah on or you could wipe on, then in your book I don't have wudu. So if I lead you in prayer and in your book I do not have wudu, then that would be a bigger deal, right, than the case where I am leading you in the prayer and I am not doing Rafa al-yadain, which is basically a recommendation, sunnah mustahabba to me, and not an obligation, let alone a prerequisite. But even if we take the bigger one, which is al-masah al-jawrabain, Imam Abu Yusuf, one of the greatest disciples of Imam Abu Hanifa, the greatest disciples of Imam Abu Hanifa were three: Imam Abu Yusuf, Imam Muhammad ibn al-Hasan, and Imam Zufar. And Imam Abu Yusuf and Imam Muhammad ibn al-Hasan are the greatest of the three, or the greater of the three. So Imam Abu Yusuf was the greatest of the disciples of Imam Abu Hanifa, and in their book, in Imam Abu Yusuf's book and in Imam Abu Hanifa's book, after you do hijama, which is wet cupping, which is bloodletting, you do have to do your wudu after the hijama, which is bloodletting. And Abu Yusuf prayed behind Harun al-Rashid one day after he had done hijama, bloodletting. It's a form of therapy where they do cupping, like it's called wet cupping, where they do very superficial cuts in the skin or the epidermis, the very superficial layer of the skin, and they let the blood come out. Anyway, so this form of therapy, after this form of therapy, because of the blood coming out, you do need to do your wudu, according to Imam Abu Yusuf, or in Imam Abu Yusuf's book and Imam Abu Hanifa's book. But the students of Imam Abu Yusuf and his companions saw him pray behind Harun al-Rashid after making hijama and not doing his wudu. And they asked him, "What have you done just now? You prayed behind Harun al-Rashid. He did not have wudu. He made hijama and he did not repeat his wudu." And then Imam Abu Yusuf told them, Malik gave him a fatwa. Imam Malik gave him a fatwa. Aftahu Malik. Imam Malik gave him a fatwa. So do you want me to say to him that you cannot take Imam Malik's fatwa and you should take mine? And then this story itself was later narrated to Imam Ahmad. Imam Ahmad came after several years from Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Abu Yusuf. So this was narrated, Imam Abu Hanifa died in 150 after Hijrah, and Imam Ahmad was born in 164 after Hijrah. So that gives you like a hint of the time difference. So this was narrated to Imam Ahmad, and in Imam Ahmad's book, he did not have wudu. So it is just like in Imam Abu Hanifa's book. But then Imam Ahmad recognizes that the people of Medina consider him to have wudu. The scholars of Medina consider him to have wudu. So when they asked Imam Ahmad, would you have done the same thing like Abu Yusuf? Would you have prayed behind Harun al-Rashid even though in your book he does not have wudu? And then Imam Ahmad said to them, do you want me not to pray behind Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib? Do you want me, Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib was one of the tabi'een, one of the followers of the Sahaba radhiyallahu alayhim, and one of the greatest jurists of the tabi'een. Do you want me not to pray behind Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib? Certainly Imam Ahmad did not see Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, but the idea here is that he's saying, do you want me not to pray behind someone like Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib, Sa'id ibn al-Musayyib and his likes, like Imam Malik and so on. So what the great Imams are teaching us in this story is that if my prayer is acceptable in my book, and I do have some point, basically the disagreement is an excusable disagreement. An excusable disagreement is when I rely on some type of proof, and I rely on proper methodology of deduction and some type of proof. So there is proof, there is proper methodology of deduction from the proof, the textual proof, or even sometimes from rational proofs. It is not that I am making it up. It is not just that I am haphazardly making up fatwas and rulings, or I am saying that I saw it in a dream, or my sheikh said it to me without any proof or justification, substantiation of the position. So if there is substantiation and there is proper methodology of deduction, then that is called excusable disagreement. And in this case, if the salah is okay in my book and the wudu is okay in my book, then it should be fine for you, even if it is not okay for your book. It should be fine for you that I am your imam. And vice versa. If you're leading the prayer and you believe in, let's say you are Hanafi, for instance, and let's reverse it this time. Let's say you're a Hanafi and you're leading the prayer and you don't believe that touching women, touching your wife invalidates your wudu, and then a Shafi'i comes in to pray behind you and he fears that you may have touched your wife going out of your home and not repeated your wudu, then this is not his business. It is not my business if I disagree with you on the fiqh of this matter. In your book you have wudu, and we're not talking in your book basically. Your book is Newsweek. We're talking about your book, meaning proper Islamic literature, proper Islamic position that have some substantiation. It's a position that is upheld by some of the great imams, the four and their likes, their equals. But so and there is the substantiation and proper methodology and so on. So without this spirit of tolerance of various viewpoints, we will have so much disunity, so much dissension, that we will not be able to function like one ummah. We will not be the one body. We will not be the one ummah. We will be sects that are basically oppositional to one another, and that are working to the detriment of one another. And this would be enormous in terms of its harmful effect on the ummah.